On this episode of Damsels in the DMs.
If when I meet him, I get half a chubby, then you totally have to run for the hills because that means he's going to kill you in your sleep. I'm telling you, that's usually the thing. If I can spot him and go, wowie, that means they're crazy and you must not date them.
This message is intended as a reminder that we are not licensed professionals, not psychiatrists or psychologists. If you have a serious problem, please seek professional help. The National Suicide Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-8255.
There's some damsels in the DM.
Yes, queen.
Tell us what's the vibe. There's some damsels in the DM. Please tell us what's the vibe. DMs, yeah we see them, yeah we read them. DMs, we don't need them, we just leave them.
Please.
Yeah.
It's going down in the DMs. Bye.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Damsels in the DMs. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Alejandro. Oh my goodness. Today is such a treasure. We have Frank DeCaro on, and he is one of the most interesting, hilarious, and just really admirable writers that we've been able to have a conversation with here on the podcast. It's been amazing. Oh my God, I'm so happy he was able to come on.
And he was also a host on The Daily Show and Sirius XM. I mean, the resume is just unbelievable.
Right, and the list of publications that he's already authored they're numerous. I mean, now he's working on book 6, and for him to take some time to share with us his process, his growth, his sources of inspiration and motivation. I mean, there's so much to take away from this.
I feel so educated on the drag community. I have so many questions for you, but
Well, I have so many questions for me too. I have to clearly do my research. I mean, the way he was name dropping, I was like, oh, wait, let me add this to my list.
Yeah.
Let's get into this.
Yeah, I'm going to be following up afterwards on some other deeper questions. But listeners, take everything you can away from Frank because it left me with a lot more too. I feel like I could have talked to him for another hour.
Get into it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Woo! All right. So today we have Frank DeCaro, author, amazing, talented drag historian extraordinaire.
Yes, not my drag is very terrifying actually, but my pop culture historian cred is good, but my drag is I just it's never glamorous. Let's put it that way. It's fun, but it's never glamorous, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, who can deny the glamour of drag coming through the big wigs of show business? I mean, this is super exciting. Before the pandemic hit, I was really fortunate to come to the book signing event that you had with Bruce Valanche, Alaska Thunderfuck.
That was such a fun night. What's exciting about having covered drag, or writing a book about drag, from the most gratifying thing for me was people who perform in drag were glad to be asked questions as artists. And what moved me most was they said that they get treated like parsley usually, that they're the little bit of glitter that sparkles up a morning news show or a local program or something, that they don't get asked the serious questions, and I was able to ask those, and they were very appreciative to be treated as the artists that they are. And that to me was the most amazing thing about the whole process.
Well, how did the idea come about to memorialize these significant conversations that you've had with these artists?
Well, it's funny. I got approached by an editor at Rizzoli Books who said, somebody needs to do a book on drag, and I think it should be you. And I thought to myself, and I'd worked for them before. I'd written a book on Bob Mackie, the costume designer, and I'd written a few other books for other people. I think this was my 5th book, the drag one. At first, I didn't think I was the right person. I was like, I mean, the few times I've been in drag, it's been one was for a web series, and I played a Jewish mama who has a heart attack in a Zumba class, and I played I'd done things for Halloween that were just terrible. I mean, there was not, you slap on some lipstick and tie a shirt over my hairy belly and say, oh, I'm a character. So it was very lame and fun. So I thought, well, maybe I'm not the right person. And then I started thinking about the fact that I kind of have been drag hag number one for a very long time, in that when I was a kid, I was watching television and I was seeing female impersonators, as we called them back in the day, um, appearing on mainstream shows. When I got a little bit older, um, I started going, when I was a teenager, I started going to this gay bar and there was a drag queen there, and that's who I dedicated my book to. And
You're talking about
then when
Mimi?
I was Mimi, yes, I God love her. I don't know where she is. I don't know anything about her. I couldn't find a word on the internet about her,
Oh.
but I went looking. But I ended up, I had seen a lot of the major players and followed their careers for a very long time. I would go to Wigstock. I went to the earliest Wigstocks. I followed Lip Sync's career and Charles Bush's career and Lady Bunny's career and
Oh my God.
all of the East Village people. I really was, I wasn't in the group, but I was chronicling the group as often as I could for the newspapers that I was working for and magazines. Also went through my ticket stubs and I started to, because I'm a pack rat, and I started to realize that I had seen really some of the greatest mainstream performers who did drag of the 20th century. I'd seen Jim Bailey, I'd seen Charles Pierce, I'd seen Flip Wilson, I'd seen Milton Berle, who was the father of television practically, doing drag. And so I was like, wait, I've been in the room with so many of these people that maybe I am the right person to pay homage to these people and to say thank you to drag performers, because I marvel at what they do and I love what they do. So it was fun to shed some light on folks that, you think they're having their moment in the sun, and some are, and that's great. But they're still not outside of the world, the closed world of this drag fanatics and those of us who adore them. They're not being asked the questions. I think the exciting thing now is when you see a drag queen on a talk show in drag talking about something they're working on. That's exciting, Jackie Beat and Sherry Vine were on Supermarket Sweep, the game show, a few years back. I think that the more drag performers are treated like any other performers, the better off we all are,
Yeah.
and in the audience. So
I grew up in the Philadelphia area, and I remember when I was like 15 or 16 in the theater program, there's this theater company called the Pig Iron Theater Company in Philly, and they do a lot of experimental theater. And I remember through my drama teacher, there was this opportunity to intern, like to be kind of like the stage manager. And I had no idea what the show was going to be, but I was really excited to like see what an actual theater company was. And it was a drag show. And I remember just being in complete awe. Like I had never seen more beautiful people in my life. And I just thought it was so incredible to see like these people transforming into this different identity, And I'm curious, like you talked a little bit about how when you were younger, you were fascinated by drag, but tell us like a little bit about how you got into the position where you were even asked about writing this book, how you got into doing drag yourself. Like walk us through your background a little bit so that we can just get an idea of how you even entered this world.
In terms of my fanhood, it was because I was one of those people raised by television, and my parents did not think that the TV was a bad babysitter. And because it was before niche programming, you watched what your parents watched. And I was lucky because my parents, I don't think I realized it at the time, but my parents were 40 and 43 when I was born. So they were into things. For what I know, I should be 80 years old, for the entertainment that I was privy to. I should be way older than I am, because they were watching these performers that they'd watched in the 40s, and 50s. So I grew up with all of that. So, we didn't have a Beatles invasion in our house, but we did have, lounge music was always a part of the soundtrack. So, so when that came back around, I was like, oh, this is what I listened to as a kid. This is my grandmother played. So that was kind of where my taste came from in terms of performing. And there were drag performers on, Lucille Ball's The Here's Lucy show. There was a brilliant drag performer named Jim Bailey performing as Phyllis Diller in drag. If you watched Vegas or you watched any number of cop shows, you always see the schizophrenic drag queen who was murderous or something, or who was that was a big in the 70s. There was a lot of, the drag performer would turn out to be the murderess. It was like, and there's one where Jim Bailey again is playing Judy Garland, and there's an assassination attempt while he's performing as Judy, and it turns out he did it himself because he's also he's the victim and the murderer because he's a drag queen. So this insanity. So we got to see things like that. And Flip Wilson was always on in our house, and he was he was a pioneering African American comedian who had his own, and storyteller who had his own variety show. One of the first African Americans to have to do that and to have a hit, certainly. And he did this character called Geraldine Jones, and we were obsessed with Geraldine. And she was real feminist, but she was this drag character. She didn't do the usual, I'm the straight guy who can't walk in heels. Instead, it was she could glide in them, and she would, she ended up she flirted with both Bill Cosby and O.J. Simpson on the show. So back in their previous lives, yes, when we were okay with both of them. But so she would make, even though he was ostensibly a straight guy, this female character would make the straight man really uncomfortable. It was very, very funny. And she stood up for herself, and she thought she was beautiful. It wasn't the In Living Color approach of I'm gonna rock your world, where she's so ugly. Wanda is so ugly. It was no, she was beautiful, and wore Poochie dresses and very 60s mod clothes and stuff. Meanwhile, as a journalist, I was someone who was covering pop culture always, and so I was, if it was some strange little club in the East Village, I was there, and I was writing stories about fashion, and I was, so I was writing about fashion when Lip Synca was on the runway for Terry Mugler, in Paris. I was in the room, and so, as I was saying before, it really was in some senses it was happenstance that I just happened to be there. It was just coincidence that I was in those rooms, but I had a good front row seat to a lot of very cool pop culture that was sort of fringy at the time. And it doesn't seem like fashion would be fringy, but when I started writing fashion, there was almost nothing on television about fashion, and there was no internet, so you didn't learn about things until weeks later.
Why do you think
But
fashion was your focal point at that point?
that was my job. I got hired as a fashion writer, and so that's why I was doing it. I had always wanted to be an entertainment writer, and I got a job as a fashion writer, and I was like, well, I guess I'll do this now. It was I had no expertise in fashion. I'm colorblind. My favorite color is leopard print. But I got this
somebody
job.
told me that my aura was leopard print, and I thought that was a pretty high compliment.
It is. It doesn't get better than that. So no, I got this job, and I was working at the Detroit Free Press first, and then I got where I covered house music. So I was always like kind of I was the cool club kid guy, but not really. Like I had the real job, and I had to be there every day, but I got to do more fringy kinds of things, and they let me cover those. Also, the pace of it was different. There weren't a million people covering what was going on in the clubs. It was. And honestly, if something was a hit in London in the fall of 2022, it would be a big hit in New York in the fall of 2023. It was like a year difference from what you were reading about in the hippest magazines on about London underground clubs or whatever. It would take a year to get to, across the ocean, and so the pace was different, and you could be hipper and hold down a good job, because nobody wanted your stories. There was no one jockeying for, let's profile Lady Bunny. There was nobody who wanted to do that story. And I was like, I'm going to do that, So I always would get teased. Editors would say I would come in and be like, oh my God, we have to cover this story or someone else is going to get to it. And years later, the one editor that I liked the best said to me, you do realize no one was going to come in with that story idea other than you. No one cares about that but you. Which I always joke. I say, if I ever have a production company, it should be called Audience of One Productions, because it's like the stuff I like. Sometimes I'm like, I'm the only person who likes it. As it turns out, with drag, not the case. Lots of people love drag. And actually, you know what? As any creative person, you're kind of justifying your own taste. a lot of times. You know, you're making movies about people you think are interesting. I'm writing stories about things I just, you do it to justify, I mean, I wrote about certain Christmas decorations for the New York Times over the holidays, and it was because I love them, and so a lot of times, you know, uh, if there's a certain kind of journalist who only writes about things they love, and that's me. So I tend to be, I look at it as like, oh, come to my party. This you'll see this. It's really fun. That's the way I write stories. It's like, oh, you need to know about this. They're cool. So in some ways, shedding light on these drag performers, even though I knew them, but Dinosaur Jr. and I know about Tina Martina, but maybe the whole world doesn't. It's that kind of thing. It's you're like, well, I guess somebody needs to. I'm not hip for someone your age, but I'm hip for someone my age. That's
Oh,
when people say you're not hip. I say, I'm not for a young person. I'm hip for an old person. It's like, you know.
One of my
But,
first drag queens that I saw was in Detroit at this club called Gigi's, which was like
GG's.
Do you remember
I
Gigi's?
went to everybody. Detroit drag bars and gay bars are the same as they were 30 or 40 years ago.
Oh my
I'm
God!
telling you.
Yes.
Ben Joe's is
5,000%.
still going, I'm sure. It should
Oh,
be.
I'm sure. But the first one, the queen that I saw was. Did you ever see D'Angela?
No, but I don't think I was more the new wave guy when I was in Detroit.
Oh my God! The way she was
Hip,
able to
remember?
the way she was able to helicopter swing her breasts during her number, it was just
How did I
quite
miss
a
that?
spectacle. I don't even
Were
know.
were they hers or had she bought them? I mean,
They were
were they?
hers.
I mean, it was hers. It wasn't a prosthetic. Is what I mean. It
No,
wasn't a.
no, they
It
were.
wasn't a chest plate or something. Yeah.
No,
Oh,
no, no.
good for her.
What talent? But I understand you went to Northwestern. So how did
I
you end up
did.
in Detroit after? Or
Oh, because in those days you kind of would take any job that was offered, and so I got offered a job in Fort Collins, Colorado, which is now best known as the Flat Earther Ground Zero. It's flat earthers live there. I had a great time there. I couldn't wait to leave. I lasted after 6 months of crying in the supply closet and hating it so much at work. I answered an ad in Editor and Publisher magazine, really like an ad, a magazine, and I answered this this is all snail mail, and you're sending off your clips that are Xerox that you're secretly doing while when no one's looking. And I wrote a note or a letter, and I said, I wish I could tell you this was 1985. I said, I wish I could tell you I was the guy who told Norma Kamali that sweat clothes would be big someday, but I can't. But I can boast a lively writing style. And so I wrote this jokey kind of thing. Well, they called me and they said, would you come and interview? And so they flew me to Detroit and I interviewed. I'm not joking when I tell you this. The editor said to me, now, if you were to get this job as a fashion writer, how would you feel about the faggot factor of your job? And I said, the what?
whoa.
And she said, well, everyone's going to think you're gay if you take this job. And so how are you okay with that? And I said, yeah, I said, I never did typically boy things. So it's really not a big deal for me. I kind of worked that through already. Thanks. And somehow I ended up, as I was leaving, they said, well, we'll call you in a couple of weeks and whatever. And the security guard downstairs, who was exactly what you'd hope a security guard would look like, he said to me, you'll be back here soon. And I said, what? And he said, you got the job. And I said, how do you know I got it? He said, trust me. He said, I know they're going to call. And the Monday after they called me, and the woman said, and I was 22 or 23. And this was Detroit Free Press was a big newspaper. It was at the time, it was like the 6th largest newspaper. And the woman called me, who I'd interviewed, not the faggot factor lady, this other editor who I like very much, called me the following Monday. So this was like Saturday, I guess I flew home. And she said, Frank, how'd you like to kiss Fort Collins goodbye? And I said, yes. And she said, well, don't you want to hear what I said, yes, whatever you're offering me is fine. Just tell me when I need to be there and how we're going to do this. And that was the end. And I just took the job. I didn't even ask what the money was. It was just like, I'm coming. And so I moved to Detroit and I had a blast. I'm the only person who ever lived like beauty of the Rocky Mountains to move to Detroit. And I was like, this is so much better. I like Detroit so much more. And I stayed there for 3 years covering fashion and traveling a little bit. And then I got this job in New York, and I suddenly was on a plane to the first story they sent me out of the country for was can you survive a package tour to the Soviet Union, which is what it was in those days.
Wow.
So I went to Moscow and Leningrad and now St. Petersburg, of course, and a couple other cities. And I'd never been out of the country, but it was like suddenly it was like, oh, I have to be a big boy and have a passport. And I'm 20. I turned 23, there in St. Petersburg, and so it was a suddenly this whirlwind thing. And then shortly after that, I got to meet that whole generation of that first out gay generation of fashion designers, the ones who were the first ones out of the closet, like Gautier and Moschino and Saint Laurent wasn't really out, but Saint Laurent, got all these shows. And Versace kind of liked me a lot. It was very sweet. So I had very good memories of Johnny Versace and stuff. So it was a weird thing because I look at it now and it's almost like a lifetime ago and somebody else did it. There I was in, my 20s and early 30s, and suddenly I was the colorblind fashion editor who was flying all over the world and having it was a really fun thing. Now, how all that prepared me to do drag coverage, I don't know, but I always, in some ways, it all sort of came together. And I, if you're covering Mugler, you're writing about Lipsinka. If you're living in New York and you're halfway hip, was the queen you paid attention to, along with Lady Bunny and Flotilla DeBarge and Varla Jean Merman and so I would go to all these shows. And also in your 20s, you can stay up. You can stay up till 4 a.m. and still go to work by 10. You could just, it's not that hard to do. And you're that now. I can still stay up till 4, but don't ask me to do anything at 10 in the morning. I don't know. I just kind of ingratiated myself with all of them. And then when I started to perform myself, not in drag, but as a stand-up or as a host, more as a host than anything, you'd be on the same bill with these people. And I'm not stupid. Lady Bunny's hilarious. I would just kill to, you're standing there and she's ripping you a new one and you're laughing your head off. And, I identified with them too, even though I wasn't someone who did drag. New York was really the island of misfit toys in the late 80s and early 90s. It was like the kid, now it's a kid. The guy running the door at the coolest nightclub wasn't the quarterback from your high school. He was you. He was the freak that everyone picked on. And now he's got the clipboard going, you, yes, you, no. And so you'd walk up to them and they would see the kindred spirit, and you'd be, the misfit toy who was suddenly like, come in, welcome, and the quarterback got to stand outside the velvet rope and go suck it, so it was,
No, that's
it
right.
was that's kind of what New York was about when I got there. When I came time to do the book for Rizzoli, it really was my contacts list or people I knew, their contacts list. It was not that hard to get in touch with any of these people. So
Yes, my heart lifted when I saw the picture of Lady Red Couture inside the book. We recently had Teddy Margus on, and
he's hilarious.
He's so funny, and he was sharing his experiences of working on Hey Queen and Hot Tea. So yeah, seeing her picture in your book just kind of like lit my heart up. And I love the line that you included by Kevin Aviance, where he says, "When you see me, you will never forget it as long as you live." Oh,
He has confidence issues. He really does.
Clearly.
Tremendous confidence issues. No, I love him.
How did you feel about the reception to the book in general?
It was great. People have called it, and this is really, in some ways, this is hyperbole, but they said it's the definitive history of drag, and so I thought that was great. Well, it is until it isn't. The next person who comes along, you just have to read it all. Everybody, the next person should, I pay a little bit of lip service to drag kings. So it's not the definitive history of drag because there's not that much about drag kings in the book. Some, but not enough. So it's like that. But I didn't feel, I thought, somebody else needs to tell that story. It was good. The reception was great. And people were eager to be part of it and part of presentations about it. And that's a lot to ask. To say, can you get in drag and come and sit with me? It's not like, can you throw on a t-shirt and meet me at the bookstore and we'll talk.
True.
But some came in full drag, some came in their street clothes, proving that a drag queen you know, the best drag queens, even out of drag, are more fascinating than 90% of the people you'll ever meet.
On that note, what are some challenges that you've experienced in your process or growth as a writer, and what are some tools that you've been able to use to persevere and overcome those?
I was the first person in my family to go to college, so it was a big deal. And honestly, I don't think they quite knew what the hell I was about. I was not only was I gay, I was weird. You know, I mean, the stuff I like, my parents would say, "Why do you think that's funny?" And it would always be, I remember taking my mother to see Mommy Dearest, and I was laughing, and she was like, "This is not funny," and I was like, "It's hilarious." So, um, I think they didn't know what to make of me, but some of the, you know, I mean, the challenges are, when I said before, when that, you know, you're sitting there and you're the gay guy, but you're not out yet, you know, but I was on fire, but I still wasn't out. And, you know, she's saying, what about the faggot factor of the job? I mean, that used to be a thing. You know, I didn't come out, I came out in 79 to my high school boyfriend, but I didn't come out in print until 1993, you know, so that's a long time
Yeah.
to be, what's the word? Discreet in print, you know, which is, and honestly, you know, there's that clip going around now where Harvey Firestein says, Barbara Walters says, "I couldn't have asked those questions," you know, and he said, "Yes, you could have, but I feel for her in some way." Yeah, she could have, yes, and she should have. However, when Johnny Versace was in an interview with me and he said, "Look, my boyfriend Antonio said," and I said, "Do you want that on the record?" And you know, I asked him, and I'm gay. He knows I'm gay. I know he's gay. We know the whole score. But I said, he said, "Yeah." He said, "Don't turn it off." He said, "I'm fine with that." And that was a big deal in 1990, whatever, you know, early 90s. So being gay in a very straight male business was kind of hard. But I've been very lucky. Stuff has fallen in my lap very often, and I'm a good surfer. You know, I shouldn't have been a fashion writer, but I became good at it. I shouldn't necessarily have gotten my first job in television as a correspondent on The Daily Show. Talk about starting at the top. You know, I mean, I did 6.5 years on The Daily Show as the movie critic and was doing all this really gay material. You know, and I made Ross Matthews look like, you know, Chris Pine on TV. You know, I was on fire. But you know, so I've been lucky in a lot of senses. I think for me now, the great challenge getting older is I wish I had the confidence I had in my 20s and 30s. Because even though there's part of you that knows you're smarter and you know more and you've accumulated more wisdom, the fight is to be valid because you've been kicking around a long time, you know, and you know, I write these books like on drag for people in their 20s. I don't know if that's who's finding them. You know, I sometimes they do. But I wonder if you know, is it people my age who are having a nostalgia trip by reading the book, which is good too, and I'm excited about that. But you kind of, everything I've written has been sort of I did a couple of dead celebrity cookbooks, and it was just because I wanted those performers to be known. That's what I did before the drag book. I did 2 dead celebrity cookbooks, and the recipes were such an almost an afterthought. It was, if you like Lady Gaga, you need to know who Liberace is. If you like, you know, this person, you need to know who that person is. And so it was a lot of wanting to share that pop culture history. So
Tell us about Christmas in Tinseltown.
yeah, Christmas in Tinseltown. That was the Christmas version of the book, but it was more. It was just so I could write up more celebrities. That I like that one better, but no one ever saw that book. I never saw that book in the store. You know, it's like it's deranged. It's like you do these things. It's a real publisher. You know, I never saw it in the store, and it was like, boy, did a great job selling that one. You know, and there's not much you can do about that. But they're mine now again, so maybe someone will publish them again, and we can. I just got the note that the rights are back to me now for the Dead Celebrity Cookbook. I was like, good. Maybe someone who knows how to get these in people's hands will be able to, you know, put it out there. But it's fun. I get my check every 6 months for them, you know, and then you can go do a fast food lunch on what they send you. So that's the thing. Oh, that I was going to say, that's the great challenge. This is what I can impart to people. If you want to make money, do not write books. Okay, this is not... unless if you can manage to sell them, that's good, for TV rights or something. But it really is. It's not lucrative. You do it really to feel valid. I mean, I don't mean to be cynical about it, but when you get to be older, you really look at it and you think, oh, well, the drag book will make me valid for a few more years, and then I'm working on a new one, and that'll keep me valid for a few more years, and then hopefully you think of something else for people to still let you talk.
Do you have
But,
anything that you like swear by that you do every day, like a morning routine or healthy habits, things that you feel like keep you creative and keep you, having the juices flowing and whatnot?
no, my habits are terrible. I wouldn't wish them on anyone, because I worry and I fret and I don't sleep, and then I write a little bit, and then I think I'm done, and then I take a nap, and then the editor is furious because I'm missing another deadline. I mean, I'm not all I can say is, if you're going to be someone who's late with something, it's got to be really good when it gets there. Okay. If
Good
you're
advice.
showing up to the party with dessert, that dessert better kill. It better not be store-bought cookies by the time you show up. It's like that, if you're the last one through the door with like, I'm sorry, this is late, it better be the most delicious cake anyone's ever eaten. And so that's what I'm hoping I can use that excuse as I miss another deadline for this new book I'm working on. But
when is it coming out?
oh, who the hell knows? In 2024 sometime. It's the history of disco, but it's a weird take on it because it's kind of disco for the uncool. It's like for those of us who didn't go to Studio 54, but who got swept up in the craze through the music and the TV shows and the movies and all the pop culture stuff. So that's sort of the gist of the thing. Because more of us learned about disco from television than did going to clubs, and a lot of us, I was a little bit too young. I wasn't cool enough to have a fake ID at that point. I did when new wave was king. I could get into everything, and I did. It was fun. But with disco, I just missed it a little bit. But my first concert was the Bee Gees, so that was, so I did see their post Saturday Night Fever tour, and it was something I thought, oh, I have something to say about disco. But I'm so late, and it just gets, every day you wake up, you're like, oh my God, it's another day. I'm going to write only a third of what I should have written today, and
Yes, I go through that too. It's so
it doesn't get better. Okay, this is the horrible truth. It never gets better. It's hard.
Well, great.
The sixth book is as hard as the first book.
No,
Yes, it's like nothing is ever easy. It's just, if it's creative, it's not easy. But you know what? If it's any good, maybe if it's any good, it has to be hard.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's crap. Probably if you can just do it, it's probably not good. But at this disco thing, it's like it's been 2 years of me sitting around going, "What the hell should this be?" Trying to figure out the puzzle of this book. Like, what do I say that hasn't been said? And I have stacks of other people's disco books, and they're very, this DJ like this beats per minute, blah blah blah. And I don't care about that. I was like, I want to hear about the divas. I want to hear the divas in their own words. I want to hear, these were the 12 movies you have to see if you want to see disco on film, whatever, As bad as most of them are. Most of them are terrible, but they're really fun. There's one called Abby, and it was originally released as Black Exorcist, and it's a blaxploitation movie, and they have an exorcism on the dance floor, and the guy, the exorcist, says, "Get out of her body," and the devil says, "I was tired of this bitch anyway."
Oh my God.
On the dance floor. Oh, I laughed so tired of this bitch anyway. So that's what I'm doing when I should be researching, trying to get in touch with Barry Gibb. I'm sitting around going, that guy was on Pee-wee Herman, and now he's the exorcist in this movie, So I was sitting watching cockamamie movies from the 70s, and yeah, anyway, I have my own, what I'm saying is I have my own process. I would not follow it if I were you. Do your own thing, but I do think the advice to anyone is figure out how you can sell yourself to other people. Yeah. It's like, because it's your taste, it's your take on it, and it's your craziness that you figure out a way to sell your nuttiness. So,
I love what you
but
said earlier too about like justifying the tastes that you have or justifying the interest and just like
yeah, because look, the
making
Dead
it.
Celebrity Cookbooks were because all I kept doing was buying these celebrity recipes in every form that I could find, and magazines, old cookbooks, old, giveaway things, and I would do. So then you're like, well, now I've got 30 of these books. How am I going to make this insanity seem productive? How am I going to make this insanity seem like research? That's what it is.
I love it. It's so cool to hear how you put the pieces of the puzzle together so neatly, even though in the process it probably seems
No, in the process,
like a
it looks
mystery.
like this. There's a stack of 50 pieces of paper that look like cocktail napkins, and with notes on it. Talk to this person, do that, pay this bill. Don't forget to mention Disco Stew from The Simpsons. I've got notes everywhere. It's Lola Falana's disco single is on the same page as Disco Stew. It's that kind of insanity. So
I think now is the best time to get into our DM questions.
yes.
So please tell us about the funniest, wildest, most inspirational, or intriguing DM that you've ever received.
Oh my God, let's see. When I get a direct message, what would have to be the strange? Okay, this is when I'm very public that I'm long time married and that we're an old fuddy-duddy couple and we don't play around. When someone treats me like a sex object, even though I really would crave that, because you get, it's nice to be, oh, you're so funny and oh, you're smart, or it's all that's good. But there are those moments where people want to meet you for an assignation and you're just like, that's very nice. You're deranged for wanting that, but thank you. So whenever I get a message that's a little, are you afraid? It's, no, I'm not. Get the hell out of here. I'm crabby and old and I don't want to deal with you. But thank you. But it is, no, there are a lot of people who all our lives we've been appreciated for being the smart one or the funny one or the whatever. And it's sort of like, couldn't you just be the one you want to throw down and attack, in a good way. And so when someone does that, though, at this point, it's just like, where were you when I was in high school? Where were you when I was in college? It's like, nothing. I sat around lonely doing nothing. It's like, now you're too late, What do they say on Golden Girls? Too widowed, too wait. Okay, it's just like, forget it. It's like, now is not the time to send me a naughty message on the team. I don't now filthy pictures of other people. I'm okay with that, but I don't want to see your thing. If you keep that to yourself, like a nice person. Okay?
Oh yeah, unsolicited dick pics just don't. Yeah,
but of a third person, I'm okay with. Especially if it's a celebrity. Oh, I'm totally. Guess who I saw? Remember that guy you liked in that Broadway musical? Here he is on Grindr. Send me that. I like that. It's like, no, I have a friend. He's like, oh, I can't find it. It's like, you were so full of shit. Why are you not sending me that photo? It's like, no, I like him. He's in the chorus of everything, and and you have a picture of him, and you're not sending it to me. You're not a good friend. I don't know. It's weird when you get. I mean, this didn't arrive by DM, but when I was doing my radio show, a woman called in, and she was kind of teary. You could hear it, and she said, "My son died of AIDS. And I have not been able to laugh until I heard your show. Your voice sounds like his did." So your son was a big fruit, is what I'm thinking. So anyway, but she said, you made me laugh again. And I thought, okay. And I just told her, I said, I am never speechless, and I'm speechless. And I said, and you've made everything I do worthwhile. It's like the idea that you laughed when you couldn't find any humor in the world. Then I did something good for somebody. And that was kind of the biggie for me. That's the one I always remember when she called in. I almost started crying myself. It really was. You feel like you've really done something, and laughter to me is the most healing thing. And it's like, if I can make somebody laugh, and that comes from, my dad was very depressive when I was young, and so trying to make them laugh and trying to bring some levity into the household was always my job. And I've always been attracted to men who were kind of unhappy. Before I met my husband's very funny, and we laugh a lot, and it's dopey and silly and fun and lighthearted. But I was always the guy who was like, is there a troubled guy? Is he, is he crazed? Is he on medication? Give it to, I could find that one. Honestly, if I walk into a room and I go, who is that? They should just get him the straitjacket and take him away. Okay. I can find the crazy. I'm, if I walk in and say, oh my God, your new boyfriend is so hot. count the silverware every time he comes over because he's going to steal from you. He's going to kill you in your sleep. It's like, depending on how, you know, if if when I meet him I get half a chubby, then you totally have to run for the hills because that means he's going to kill you in your sleep. I'm telling you, that's usually the thing. If I can spot him and go, wowie, you know, that means they're crazy and you must not date them. Yeah.
Well, on the note of levity, though, I'm also the DM. There's a DM of the week that asks if you could assemble a drag superhero, from whose supply of radiance would you pull to create this morphing Megasaurus?
Wait, so I can put a bunch of people together? I can make a bouillabaisse of drag superhero. Oh, geez. All right, let me think. All right, Jackie Beat for her intelligence, so we'll do that.
Yes.
Miss Coco Peru for her empathy, because she has a great heart for wanting to save kids, you know, and make them feel good about themselves. Varla Jean Merman has turned out to be a muscle daddy when she's not in drag. So I think for strength, we'll take Varla Jean Merman. She's a wall of man now. Okay. She's this big muscle daddy. Kevin Aviance's ferocity. Let's have you want your superhero to be fierce. Bianca Del Rio for her bravery, because that bitch will get out there and say and do anything. So we love her.
So deep.
Yes.
I love it.
And wait, what would be someone with a superpower? Lady Bunny for her immortality, because she's basically, I think she should have been dead years ago, but she's not. And I'm very glad she's not. But I do think she's like the Cher of drag, and that, you know, after the apocalypse, there'll be Lady Bunny. You know, so and I hope that's true. I hope that she's the last drag queen standing. But that's who I think I would put it. And then RuPaul's publicists would be good to throw in there too. And who else do we? And one other person, Miss Richfield, was she 84? Whatever her last number is. Miss Richfield, because she drives around on a scooter, so like a rascal. So that's how the superhero would get around on a rascal. So she'd be honking and stuff, and you would think she's not powerful, and then she'd read you to filth. So you know, and so I think it's a lot of people in one drag. It's a lot of that's a super duper hero, I think.
Yeah.
It's a Megasaurus, I think. Yeah, it's a morphing Megasaurus that deserves to exist in this world.
I wouldn't. You'd have to weigh in at a truck stop, I think, for that instead. That's a big person if you put them all together, I think.
Yeah, that seems.
I didn't pick all the skinny ones. You know, I picked some of the bigger. Well, Coco is skinny, and you know, Bianca's thin. So
I love what you said about Coco Peru, though, that you used the phrase the autobiographical monologue. How do I say that? Oh my god, I'm like tripping.
Yeah, what do we call it? Yeah,
autobiographical monologuist.
Yeah. Anyway, she's got a lot of empathy. She's out there to save the kids and make people feel better about themselves, which I think is pretty great.
Yeah.
These old drag queens, they have a lot to, you know, they may not have been on Drag Race, but they paved the way. So, and that's why I did the book ultimately, was to pave the way, or to pay homage to those who paved the way. Because I feel that way. I feel like you need to know who you owe a debt, you know, to whom you owe a debt. I think that's, you know, I did my shtick on The Daily Show, and I can tell you exactly whose acts I stole from when I was a kid. You know, I mean, it's like there were a bunch of gay comedians who were not out, but were doing this coded stuff. And it's like, I watched what they were doing. It's like, oh, Jesus, I'd had no career without watching that as an 8-year-old, you know. There's a guy named Alan Sues he was flaming, but he would do, and I don't think he ever came out really, but he did a character who was a sportscaster, and it would always be like, you know, oh, the Tiddlywink champions, you know, we're going crazy this week. And it was like, oh my God, the voice quality is exactly what I did on The Daily Show. You know, he would do it, and he would do a children's show host, and he'd go, oh, Daddy had too much medicine last night, you know, and it was so fruity. And it was like, oh my God, that's exactly the stuff I pull. So I think it's good to do that. Remember when Lady Gaga, there was one time where she was wearing she was in a wheelchair with a mermaid tail on.
Yeah.
And Bette Midler said, as long as I'm alive, that shtick is mine. And it's because Bette had been doing it since the 70s, you know, and it was sort of like, oh, no. Well, when I'm dead, you can do what you, but I was just love that I Bette was like, oh no, until I'm dead. That's fine. And it's like, yep. It's like, you gotta, So for those who can't do what Bet did, I feel like I'm there to say, that was great, but you need to know about Flip Wilson. You need to know about Charles Pierce. You need to know about Charles Bush. So I'd be, drag grandpa. So
All right, drag grandpa. Well, our listeners are definitely going to keep in touch with you, and please share with us how we can stay updated on your future publications, your social media.
My social media, I try. And honestly, for someone my age, when you get like 400 likes or something, you're like, ooh, that's a big deal for old people. Okay, 400 likes is a big deal for old.
I get excited about 20.
Yeah, no, usually I get like 11. Because I've been making these collages. This is what I started doing during COVID. I make these little, they have that function on your phone that you can put pictures together and stuff. Well, I'm always doing things that really amuse me, and it's like, and generally speaking, no one else finds it funny. I laugh and laugh and it'll be like the stodgiest 60s grandmother from a TV show and a porn star, from today, put next to each other, but they're on Instagram at Frank DeCaro Show, FrankDecaro Show. But thank you for being interested and for letting me foam at the mouth like this. Like a crazy
oh my God, thank you for coming on.
For being here.
You have been so amazing. You are such a gift. This has been so fulfilling on so many levels.
Wait a minute, hold on one second. Hey, Pop, I just got called a gift. Okay. I'm sorry, talking to my dead father. I'm sorry. Got it? All right. So they're never far away, but they heckle from the great beyond. They do. So.
That's exciting.
Well, let's talk disco when that's ready.
Yeah, please come back. What the damn resume? That was so cool.
Woo. Oh my God, I'm still levitating, and I could just sit and listen to him for another hour.
Yeah.
And I feel, like I said earlier, I feel like I've learned so much, but I also feel like I have so much more learning to do after all the information that he shared. And I think, taking away from this, the importance of just sticking to what brings me joy and what I find curious or what I find tickles my
yeah, you don't need to necessarily be on a linear path. You can just take opportunities the way that they come to you and allow yourself to just follow your interests rather than what you think your interests should be.
Yeah, and I love that. Being able to listen to your intuition and allowing yourself to fully immerse oneself.
And be flexible. Yeah.
And be flexible, yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that I had taken away from this episode was about how we always ask about healthy habits or morning routines. He's like, I don't have a routine. I just try to write every day, which, in itself is a healthy habit that he tries to make happen. But what I liked was that he wasn't mean to himself about that. He's like, yeah, it's a struggle to write every day, but I keep going with it. And I think that type of flexibility where we can not adhere to the habits that we think we should have so closely, but just allow us to take in what keeps us moving and understand that, I feel like was really powerful.
It was super, super powerful. And if you're looking for more powerful conversations, you can take a look back at previous episodes we've done, and you can stay tuned for more episodes to come with amazing and fascinating guests that we have on deck for you. And as always, our DMs are open, so send us your thoughts, send us your feedback, send us your questions too.
Yes, please send us your DMs for the future guests that we'll have. We'll be posting them on the Instagram so that we can stay up to date on what you'd like to be hearing. Please let us know what you're thinking about our rebrand. If you have any suggestions for us, people that you'd love us to have on, let us know. And as usual, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Damsels in the DMs.
Until next time.
Going down in the DMs. Bye.
DMs, we don't need them, we just leave them.
Please.
Yeah.
It's going down in the DMs. Bye.